And they also translated a little book, Why I Stopped to Be a Jew. I published a little book, Why I Stopped to Be a Jew. And they translated it to the Korean.
Okay, sir. Let's start.
Okay.
Today, we are here to discuss the book of Professor Shlomo San. The book's title is Invention of the Jewish People. My name is Zulfikar Qureshi. I'm a lawyer based at Karachi, Pakistan. We are a small group of friends and we adhere rationality and tolerance in society. It's a great pleasure to have Shlomo San, Professor Shlomo San with us. A brief introduction of Professor Shlomo San is that he started teaching in 1988, and from then he has been associated with Tel Aviv University. His main areas of interest include French intellectual history, political history of the 20th century, cinema and history, Asian and nationalism, history and theory. So today, the book which we are discussing is this, The Invention of the Jewish People. And before we go and invite Professor Shlomo San, let me have a vote of thanks to Professor Shlomo San. I just asked randomly to Professor Shlomo San and he accepted our offer for a brief lecture. Thank you very much, sir. And the reason why this book still fascinates me, when I read that book 3 years ago, but even after 3 years, it still fascinates me. Why? In the introduction, Professor Shlomo San writes, I don't think books can change the world, but when the world begins to change, it searches for different books. What a beautiful words, that books are here every era of humanity, but people don't change. When people want to change, they look for different books. So I was a student at the time, and then in the same paragraph, Professor Shlomo San writes, generally speaking, educational systems teach you to begin writing after you have finished your thinking, meaning that you should know your conclusion before you start writing. Bracket, that was how I obtained my doctoral degree. That's the same thing. Like if you are making the documentary, you presuppose what you want to show and you don't deviate from it. So these two things just kept me inside the book, and I finished that book in 3 days. So thank you very much, Professor Shlomo San, and please, it's over to you.
First of all, thank you, because you see, to get a letter from Karachi about this book, I become happy. Happy because it's so far, it's so different, Pakistan and Israel. And you know, it's
Hello, voice is distorted.
Sorry? Okay.
Is it okay now?
Do you hear me? Okay.
Is it okay now, Suhail bhai?
Yeah, I don't see you, but it's
Zulfikar,
okay.
I think connect it again. There is a hearing problem. I think voice is distorted.
Even now it's distorted?
I mean, I don't see you, but I see myself and I see the other people also. Then I can continue to speak if you want. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Hi.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, okay, carry on, please.
Okay. Tell me when I can start again.
You can start now.
Start now.
Okay. Then I want to thank you for inviting me to this conversation, because I got a lot of letters from Europe. I got a lot of letters from United States, but it's the first time that I have contact with Karachi I'm happy with this contact because it's different than all the other contacts that I have with the Western culture and Western historians. Then in a very nice letter beside. Anyway, you see, I wrote this book not because I have a lot of courage, because I become a full professor, and I decided instead of getting secretaries, assistants, and etc., I decided to try to write a book different that I wrote till this moment. I mean, 11 years ago, and I decided to touch something that I knew that will hurt a lot, because the past for every nation is a kind of a dream. I think that all the past of all the nation are inventions, not only the Jewish mythology. You heard me? Okay, yeah? Then you see, I decided to touch this question of what is the national past of a nation, of a people? In starting working on this subject, I felt become, more and more different than other professors around me. You have to understand that in Tel Aviv University, like in all the Israeli universities, there is not a department of history. There is a department of Jewish history and department of general history. I'm a specialist of Europe, of the Western world, and I didn't have a right to write about Jewish history. This division of labor in the Tel Aviv University, I think that the origin of it is because we cannot apply the same conceptual mechanism on general history and on national history. And I discovered that nobody wants to confront it with difficult questions. What is really a nation? Because most of the historians are writing about nations like it's something that was invented 2,000, 3,000 years ago. It's not only about the Jewish Zionism in Israel, it's everywhere. Also the French, for a long time, the French knew that their nation, the French nation, started with a goal, in the time of Julius Caesar. They would believe all the 19th century and half of the 20th century that they are nation from the time of Julius Caesar. Now, today, in England, in France, in Germany, nobody really believes the nations exist 1,000 or 2,000 years. Most of the historians are sure that it is a modern, contemporary invention. By the way, I hope that you will not be angry at me. I think that Pakistan is not different than other modern nations. And they invented its past like the French, like the English, like the Italians. With the Jewish, with Zionism, it's become much more serious, because if I say that nations are modern inventions, the justification of all the colonization in Palestine become very, very problematic. Now, I remember working on the text. I was afraid, by the way, on the beginning. It was not my field, and I had a lot of hesitation. But then I decided I am a full professor, What is the reason that I have to be afraid? You understand? Then I will not have a secretary. I will not have assistant. But it's okay. But I will be translated to Korean. I didn't know yet at that time. Anyway, I was working in trying to understand what happened with all the history of the Jewish from the biblical time till now. And very quickly, I understood that the notion of a Jewish people is not a serious notion. It's not really. something serious. Why? Because, you know, a people, usually, when I'm speaking about the Pakistani people, it's a group of human beings that have in common some cultural trait, language, music, things like this. And I put forward the question, what is common to the Jewish 200 years ago? Why a Jewish from Morocco and a Jewish from Ukraine belongs to the same people when they speak different language, they eat different food, they have other, you know, quite different cultural practice than white people. I started to speak with, you know, colleague in the university, and they say, be careful, be careful. You cannot touch things like this. And then I put forward the question. I remember the day that I asked myself, the history that is taught in Israel, he said that 2,000 years ago, the Roman took the Jewish and they exiled them to Europe. You know, the exile of the Jew. And I remember asking myself, I have to look for books, historical books about the exile. And this was the first shock that I was sure that I am more right than all the colleagues in the university. Why? You have to understand, for the Jewish mythology, for the Jewish history, for the Jewish consciousness, national consciousness, the exile is the exile of the Jews in 70 after Jesus Christ is the basic of their identity. We were exiled 2,000 years ago, and we come back 2,000 years later. I went to the library of the university, a very, very large library, and I was looking for books about the act of the exile. You know, there is a lot of books of Jewish communities in history, thousands of books. And I was looking for one book that tells us about the exile. And I remember sitting in the Tel Aviv University bibliothèque library and looking for a book about the exile. It didn't find one book about the exiles of the Jews. How come? I remember the day that I went to the library looking for books about the exile and not finding them. This moment I understood that I'm in a good way to produce something different. Till now, nobody wrote a book about the exile of the Jew. There is books about every Jewish community in the world. And I continue to progress in discovering that the exile didn't happen. And besides it, there is Jewish kingdom, very important one, that nobody is reading, is speaking about it. You know, and I continue to progress in my work. I was sitting, by the way, in a sabbatical year in France. I was cut from people. Only a few, you know, contacts in Aix-en-Provence. I met a Palestinian student that I saw 3 times a week, and I telling him what I'm writing. He was a student of economy in Aix-en-Provence. He came from Palestine. And this was one of the rare contacts that I had during this year that I wrote the book, The Invention of the Jewish People. Now, something very important. The book came out in Israel in Hebrew. It was a principle for me to publish, first of all, in Hebrew. You know, we are not exactly a democratic state, but we are a very liberal state. Now, the book was published immediately because, you know, I'm a professor in the university. I have a kind of legitimation. And in 3-4 weeks, it's become a bestseller in Israel. It was in the list of the bestsellers for 21 weeks. I started to get letters, and you have to know that I continue to get letters from 2008 till now, every week, especially from Jews in the world, but not only Jewish. A lot of priests wrote me, even German generals wrote me. Then in Israel, they accept the book with a lot of curiosity. A lot of people started to hate me. It's not simple for somebody that you tell him that he is not what he thinks that he is. And especially, he has not a right of the land that he is living, historical right. I believe that Israel society has the right to continue to exist in the Middle East, like the American society, like the Australian society, that are also a result of colonization, but they become historical fact. You understand? But in Israel, it's very delicate to say you didn't have any historical right to come and to conquer this land. Why? Because it never happened in exile. Then you didn't come back. It's an invention. It was a lot of difficult for a lot of people, even in university, to accept it. And then the book started to be translated, and I got letters, you know. It was important for me to decompose an essentialist view about Jewishness and Jew. Essentialist, you understand? I want to decompose it, and also to attack Jewish racism. If I hate anti-Semitism, and if I hate Judophobia, I hate also Jewish racism. In my book, I didn't hide it. I try to say that the Jewish is composed for a lot of things. There is not a Jewish race, even not a Jewish people. By the way, there is, as a result of the colonization, there is an Israeli people here, you know, speaking Hebrew, have a culture, theater, cinema. The problem is, of this society they are living, they didn't stop the colonization. It's not like in Australia or United States that the colonization more or less stopped. Here, they are in the middle of the process of colonization. They are not satisfied of the 67 borders. You understand? This is the reason that my book make a lot of trouble in Israel, was problematic in Israel. And a lot of people hate me. Hate me because I'm a troublemaker, but they couldn't touch me. You know, I was a full professor. I wasn't afraid. You know, and they are not making troubles if you are a Jew and not a Palestinian. It's more easier to be here from Jewish origin. After this book, I wrote the invention of the land of Israel, how it was invented, that this land is our land, historically. And the third book of the trilogy was how I stopped to be a Jew. And here I want to stress one thing important. You see, I accept the existence of Israeli state as a product of history. I want to change this state. I prefer that it will be a state of a kind of, you know, a state for the two people or two states beside with the confederation. I'm open to any. I against the occupation of Israel of occupied territory, and I'm against the fact that 53 years we are living with people that has not any right, political, civic right in the world accepted. It's unbelievable. I open a question. You know, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Here they call it the eternal capital of Israel. In the capital of Israel, Jerusalem, there is 40% of Palestinians they were annexed to Israel without having any political civic right. In the capital of your state, you have 40% of the people that they have not any civic right. You can understand it? This is the political motivation that is the basic of my book. But I try to be honest, and I also accept some historical development. Israel exists. All my life, I refuse to accept the liquidation. I think that people that are speaking about the liquidation of Israel are stupid. Why stupid? Because nobody can destroy Israel by force. Israel can be changed only with the Palestinian from inside. And I think that the colonization create two peoples, the Palestinian people and the Israeli people. I don't know if I'm clear enough. The Zionist colonization create two people, the Israeli people and the Palestinian, because before, I don't believe that before the colonization, the Zionist colonization, we had a Palestinian people. It was created by the opposition to the colonization. I think that I'm clear about it. Today, I am for the right of the two people to exist. I prefer that they will exist together in, a confederation or something like this. Once in London, I give a lecture at the university. Arab student refused to accept the principle that the Israeli people exist. I tried to convince them that the Israeli people exist because language, culture, cinema, a lot of things. Zionism succeed to create the Israeli people. They don't want to recognize it, but it's a fact. And then I say, at some moment, you can say that the shitty people, that the Israeli people exist. Day after it, the Jewish Chronicle published the article about me and the title was, Shlomo Zahn said that the Israeli people is a shitty people. This was the title. And I tried to convince the Arab student that there is an Israeli people. It was created by this process of colonization. Shlomo Zahn said that the Israeli people is a shitty people. Now, coming back to the long, very important question. By the way, the Palestinians also invent a kind of mythological history. There are Palestinian historians that say that the Palestinians are existing for 2,000 years. By the way, if the exile didn't happen, there is more chance that a member of the Hamas in Nablus or in Halil, Hebron, is a descendant of the ancient Hebrew much more than me. You understand? Descendant of the ancient Hebrew. I mean, I don't think that the population in this land of Palestine changed radically, in history. I think a big part of this population stayed on place. And I think that there is a greater chance that a part of the Palestinians are descendant of the ancient Hebrew much more than most of the Jews in the world. Saying it in Israel is a provocation. You understand me? Now, I wrote the last book of the trilogy saying I stopped to be a Jew. And now, for finishing, I will say why I stopped to be a Jew. You see, my parents in Poland, before the Second World War, were living in a country, the definition of the real citizenship was religious, ethno-religious. If we were not a Catholic, you were not really a Polish citizen. I'm living now in Israel, in a country that has the same basic ethno-religious definition of a real citizens of Israel. I mean, as a Jew, I am a privileged person in this country, in Israel. Because, you know, the Palestinians living the 67 borders are citizens, but the state doesn't belong to them. They are second zone citizens. Nothing shows that this state is also their state. Then if the state defines itself as a Jewish state and not as an Israeli state, it doesn't belong to this state. Then I'm a privileged person. I don't want to be privileged. Privileged people, in my theory, are losing in the end. I hope. Everywhere. Then this is the reason that I define myself as an Israeli and not as a Jew. In the second reason that I wrote the book, Why I Stopped to Be a Jew, was, you see, you can become socialist, you can become French. I think that you can become Pakistani, you can become Israelis. But what is the way to become a Jew if you are not a religious person? I mean, somebody that wants to become Jews, he become religious, he believe in God, and he become Jews. Okay, he converted to Judaism. But what happened if somebody is, atheist, agnostic? How this person can become a Jew? There is no any way. It's a closed club. I decided in my old days to stop to be a privileged person. And this is the reason that the third part of my book is called How I Stopped to Be a Jew. I will stop now, see if you have questions. Okay? You hear me? I will stop now and see if you have questions. I don't know what is interesting. I expose more or less the great lines of my thinking. Okay?
Okay, sir. So before going on to the Q&A, let's start.
Everybody falling asleep?
No, no.
No, sir, we are awake, but due to so that we don't end up mixing our voices, all of us have put the mics on mute.
Okay.
So on the page 14, you write, by the time historian has taken the first step in his career and began to understand the unfolding of time, this huge universe of naturally constructed truth has taken up residence in the scholar's mind, and thought cannot put pass through it. Thus, the historian is the psychological and cultural product not only of personal experiences, but also of instant memories.
I didn't hear you very good. One moment. Tell me exactly. I will see in the book. One moment.
जुल्फकार मेरे ख्याल से माइक तुम्हारा दूर है तो इसलिए आवाज उन्होंने कम आ रही है.
Which page?
Page 14.
14?
14.
40 or 14?
14.
40. Yes, the second paragraph.
Yes, second. By the time a historian has taken the first step in his career and began to understand the unfolding of time.
No, I don't find it. 40.
14.
14.
Yes, 14. second paragraph.
Yeah. Over and above all these components, in the fact that the historian, like other members of society, accumulate layers. This is the paragraph, yeah?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Then what is the question?
The question is, when you say that the historian is the psychological and cultural product not only of personal experience, but also of instilled memories. What do you mean by instilled memories?
I don't know. I wrote it. No, it was a joke. It was a joke.
We can move to another question. Let's.
Okay, continue, because it's a very abstract paragraph and I have to be concentrated on it.
Okay, it's okay, sir. Page number 191. 191.
191.
Yes, sir. Last paragraph.
I didn't wrote it because I don't understand what I wrote. It doesn't mean that I didn't write it.
No, no, it's okay. It's okay, sir. The last paragraph, sir.
In 191.
191, yes.
Jewish monotheism, which was not. This is the paragraph.
Yes, I'm reading fourth line of it. The Muslim holy book contained various phrases, stories, and legends taken from the Old Testament and flavored with local imagination, from the Garden of Eden to the Shekhana, through the tales of Abraham, Joseph, and Moses, to the messages of David and Solomon, who are called prophet. Echoes of the Old Testament are heard throughout the Quran, though it does not mention the great prophets like Jeremiah and Isaiah, and of the later ones only Zechariah and Joanna. So my question is, when in the book, when in the Quran, they didn't mention the Jeremiah and Isaiah,
I didn't find mention of Zechariah and Jeremiah. I didn't find in the Quran.
Yes, yes. So my question is that Jeremiah and Isaiah, when they didn't write it in that book, so is it for some political reason that they didn't write it, or some economical reason?
Yeah, I understood, but I cannot answer you this question because I'm not specialist of the Muslims' belief. You understand? I'm careful about it. I'm afraid. I have a few theories. I remember looking for it, but I wasn't sure. I have friends, specialists of Islam, but they cannot answer me. And I only look, and I found that Jeremiah and Isaiah, that the two prophets, very interesting prophets, by the way, I think that they are the basic of Christianity. You see? I don't think that Judaism is the basic of... I don't think that the prophet is the basic of Judaism. These prophets are the basic of the Christianism. You understand me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was looking at in the Quran. I wanted to know if these two prophets, when I was young, I was educated by this prophet, in the school, studying the Bible. I didn't have a choice. And I like these two prophets much more than all the stories in the Bible. Okay?
Okay, sir. Page number 238. 238.
Yeah.
Yeah. From the first paragraph, in 1976, Arthur Koestler dropped a literary bombshell entitled The 13th Tribe, which was translated into many languages and provoked a variety of reactions. In 1982, the book by Norman Gall, Khazarian Hebrew document of the 10th century, laid the critical foundation for the book. Then the popular work by Kivian, A Book, The Jewish of Khazaria, appeared in 1999. This known academic writer also started an extensive website dedicated to the subject of Khazaria. Then you mentioned the quote 110 citation, and when we go down, you says that in private conversation, the anonymous publisher told me that he hesitated to distribute the book because Israeli society was not yet ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is your question?
Yeah, the citation 112 on the same page.
What is the, sorry, again?
Yeah, so my question is, sir, that this book, current book that you have in your hand, this book also was published in the same country. So why the publisher thought that this cannot be published in the country, or he was not belonging to the intellectual circle?
Yeah, exactly. This is, I mean, it wasn't in Hebrew. You understand? They didn't diffuse it in Hebrew. It wasn't written in Hebrew. It wasn't diffused in Hebrew. You don't have in Hebrew anything besides my book about this. By the way, yes, the book of Kessler was translated to Hebrew, but not diffused. It wasn't diffused. It wasn't sold in the libraries at all. Now, they are so afraid about these questions of the origin of the Jewish that this is the thing that make me so a troublemaker. This question. Then they didn't translate it to Hebrew. If they translated Kessler without diffusing the book in the libraries. You understand? It's a private person. Very strange one. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned this story started, gave me the idea. You know, a guy in Jerusalem. It's interesting, very mystery story. And a guy in Jerusalem translated the book of Kessler in Hebrew. I got a pamphlet in my mailbox saying that the book is going to be published. After a few months, not getting any idea of the book, a student of mine called the guy that published it and asked him why he not diffusing the book about the Khazars of Kessler. The answer was that the Israeli society is not ready to read the book like this. Then I called him and I asked him what he mean by saying that the Israeli society is not ready for it. And then he said to me, he told me, ask yourself how Professor Pollack died. You heard me? Professor Pollack wrote the most important book about the Khazar. He was a professor in the Tel Aviv University, and he died mysteriously. Mysteriously? Nobody knows what happened to him. You are with me or not?
We are
Yes.
listening, sir. Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Then I started to look forward what happened to Professor Pollack, that wrote the most important book about the Khazar that wasn't translated to English, unfortunately, only to Polish. And then I found that nobody knows how Pollack died. One of the people that I know went to the police to ask how he died. It was very complicated. And then I got the idea to write a mystery book, a thriller about this professor. I don't know if he was murdered. I don't think that he was murdered. But, one moment. I wrote this book. You see?
Yes, sir.
This is a thriller, historical thriller, that was published in France a year and a half ago. become very, very selling that. You see the book, and I'm trying to invent a fiction, the same problem. You understand? It was published also in Hebrew. Okay?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if I answer your question, but this is the book. I wrote a thriller about your question in some way.
Okay, but sir, that book is in French, and unfortunately, I don't speak or understand French.
You don't read French.
I cannot read.
No, because I can send you the book in French because it isn't published yet in English.
Yes.
By the way, Verso is not publishing thrillers, and it is a fiction book about the question why, about the Khazars, and how this professor died. Okay,
Okay, sir.
I want to be amazing and not to take myself so seriously. You understand? Then I decided to write a roman. Now it has a lot of success in France.
Okay.
Because it's going to appear as a pocket book.
Okay.
It's the same theory like in the Invention of the Jewish people here. You see?
Okay. Okay. Sir, I have another question. So on the page number 78,
78.
yes, 78.
Yeah.
Yes, third paragraph,
Third paragraph. Yeah. It was the
second, third
18.
line. Second, third line. Thinkers from Karl Marx to Ernest Renan published prejudice writing about Jews, Africans, or the Prophet of the Orient, which were very quickly became the norm.
78.
Yes, 78. Yes.
It was in the 50s that Scotsman Robert Knox published his well-known book, The Race of Men. Yeah. This is the paragraph. Yeah.
Yes. And the last line of this paragraph.
Yeah. Yes. Thinker from Karl Marx to Ernst Renan published prejudice writing about Jewish, Africans, or the people of the Orient, which very quickly become the norm. Yeah. What
Yes.
is the question?
So my question is, what were the writings that you are referring of the Marx that Marx was prejudiced? Because that's the new thing. When I read the book, I couldn't understand it. So what like is it that phase of Marx when he was in London and he was putting his clothes to the pawnbroker and the pawnbroker was Jewish, so he was because of his own personal life he prejudiced towards you, or is it some other reason?
Okay. Now, you have to understand that I don't accept the position of Edward Said. I don't accept today the position. You know who is Edward Said? And he blamed Marx to be an Orientalist. I mean that he, take the Orient people as inferior without any personal development to capitalism. Now, the position of Edward Said in face of Marx, I don't accept it. But I accept the fact, two things very important. First of all, it was a moment that Marx is writing articles in a daily newspaper about India. I don't know if you know these articles. Now, he didn't become Orientalist like Ernst Renan. First of all, it's not true. And I think that the position of Edward Said is not right. But you can find, if you are a Bedouin, that the concept of Marx was that in the societies, heritage of the Oriental despotism. You know the notion of Oriental despotism in Marx's writings? He didn't believe that this society can develop their own capitalism. Even in the Communist Manifesto, he said that the shock of these societies can come only from outside. In some way, he believed that the European Western capitalism will put India, Pakistan, and others on the good way to development. Then there is sentences in Marx that you can interpret it to that you know that he was a little bit Orientalist, thinking that, by the way, I'm sure that he was not Orientalist. He hated too much the European bourgeoisie. But it's true that at some moment he believed profoundly that without the intervention of the Western capitalism, there will not be historical development, modern historical development in the Orient. He believed that the capitalism, the function of, even in the manifest, Communist Manifest, he say that the Western capitalism will destroy the walls of China and will push this society to the development of industrial development. I think that Marx was wrong in his analysis of the capacity of the capitalism to industrialize the third world. You understand me? Now, about his anti-Semitism or Judophobia, you asked me also about this, yeah?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No. Now, there is writings. I don't think that Marx was anti-Semitic, but you know, in letters that he wrote to Engels, there is definitions of Jews that it was better not to write. You understand? He didn't, you know, he hated Lassalle. You know, is Ferdinand Lassalle. He was a very important German socialist and Jew. Then he speak about him in the letters, really in a stupid manner. But more important, his essay, The Jewish Question of Marx, in his essay, he thinks that there is a relationship between the Talmud and money, between the most important Jewish writing, because the Talmud is a writing of Jewish much more than the Bible. Okay, the Bible is not a Jewish book. The Talmud is a Jewish book. Marx, in his essay, you can see it. I'm quite sure that it was translated to all the languages. The Jewish question, he is making a line, a direct line between Jewishness of Talmud and money, in capital. I don't think that there is a direct relationship between the Jewish belief, the Jewish religion, and money. I don't think so. It's true that there, in some moment in history, a few Jews play a very important function in the concentration of capital. But there is not any relationship with somebody who knows what is the Talmud to accumulation of capital at all. I don't like the Talmud because of other reasons. Okay? The concentration of the Jewish on themselves and all, etc. But the Talmud is not a book of capital, of money at all, like Marx believed writing the Jewish question, the essay, The Jewish Question. I want that you will understand. The Jewish Question is a pamphlet, an essay that Marx wrote when he was young. And the conclusion, political conclusion, is that Germany has to give equal rights to the Jew. I mean, politically, The text is good, in my point of view. But from historical point of view, the relationship that he made between Talmud and money is false. You understand me? Again, I
All right.
describe Talmud as a writing. I prefer the Bible, I prefer the Quran, I prefer the New Testament. Has literary production, but the Talmud is not a book, is not the basic of Jewish vision of money at all. And you can say that it is a kind of anti-Jewishness that Marx, have like a lot of German in his time. You know, most of the socialists in that time of Marx were much more anti-Semitic than him. I don't know if you know the name Fourier, Proudhon, anarchist socialist writers. Most of them were anti-Semitic. In the middle of the 19th century, a lot of socialist thinkers were anti-Semitic because they were anti-capitalist. And they make a short way between anti-capitalism and anti-Judaism. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir. I'm listening to you.
Nobody will blame me that I defend Judaism. But you know, Judaism and money is not it's not true that it is, you know, if you are reading the Talmud, you will not find a vision, abstract or concrete vision to accumulate money. It's false. And Marx was writing it, you know, too quickly. But globally, you know, I don't think that Marx was a racist. I think that most of the socialists were in his time worse than him about Jewish. You understand me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I will tell you to make it more clear. The new book that I wrote started with a joke and finished with a joke. Then I will tell you the first joke. It's about Jewish. The book shows that the Jewish were not race, and the Jewish has not any special relationship with money. Most of the Jews were very poor in the history of Europe. Very few of them become millionaires, bankers, and all this. And you know, as I don't like Zionism, I don't like anti-Semitism, and I think that Marx wasn't anti-Semitic, but he has a few weak positions about Jews. Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's now clear. Sir, you talk about Yitzhak Bayer and Bin Zion Dinor. These two are the Yitzhak. You
Again?
you mentioned the two names, Yitzhak Bayer and Bin Zion Dinor.
Pension Dino. Yeah. He was the minister of education, one of the most important. Yeah.
Yeah, you say that these two are the ones they they know that there was no forced compulsion, no forced expulsion, but they created the myth. So while I was reading the name of Yitzhak Bin Zion Dinur, after 1947, when Pakistan came, so IH Qureshi, Ishtiyaq Hussain Qureshi, he was the historian appointed by the state of Pakistan, and he did the same thing. As so he's a Pakistani Bin Zion Dinur.
Okay. So, very interesting. Yeah, I believe that that's an exception is my book. You think I think building myth is the work of all the nationalists. You know, and one of the things that lately I was thinking about nationalism in general. I don't know if I can say it, but it's very interesting. If you cannot take Marxism in Islam or Marxism in Judaism to combine it. I don't believe. But nationalism is like a whore that can sleep with everybody, with fascism, with, if you want, with liberalism, with democratism, with Marxism, with Islam. Nationalism and Islam can go together very good. As I say, nationalism is one of the phenomena in the modern history. It's like a whore that can sleep with everybody. I don't know if I can use this term, but this night I was thinking about that. Nationalism can be combined with a lot of things, you know, and even with Marxism, you know, there is a very interesting development of the relationship with the nationalism and Marxism in China. But I will put it beside now. You understand me?
Yes, totally understand. And then, sir, if some Pakistani feminist women hear this dialogue between us and your explanation of whole, so they will march towards Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
Sir,
Okay.
yes.
Do you want to continue or to finish?
No, we want to continue. You have a time?
Yeah, I become a little bit tired, but put
Okay.
something more. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, sir, for the ones who are just listening, can you explain the main theory that the Ashkenazis, yes, the ethnic,
Yeah. You know, it's very curious that the word Ashkenaz, 100 years ago, it was only the Jewish in Germany. The East European Jewish were not called Ashkenaz. We don't know exactly the origin of the word Ashkenaz. But 100 years ago, the German Jew look on the Eastern European Jew as, you know, Ostjuden. It's in Germany. Ostjuden, Jewish of the East. They were not Ashkenaz. Arriving to Israel, most of the Eastern Jew, like my parents, wanted to be Ashkenaz because it was more chic to be Ashkenaz. In the development of the Israeli culture, it was the Ashkenaz, the Jewish from East Europe, that, you know, put the basic of this state, of this nation. The, we can call the Sepharad. It's a very also stupid word. I mean, it's much more better to say the Jewish Arabs that came after it become the second class in Israel. I mean, most of the Arab Jews that came from Iraq, from Algeria, from Morocco, become a second zone in the, you know, in the pyramid of the Israel society. Ashkenaz, I mean, the East European was the head. Jewish Arabs, descendant of Jewish Arabs in all this country in the Middle East, in North Africa, become the second. And the Syrian Arabs are in the bottom. You heard me? The bottom of this society.
Yes, we are hearing.
Now, if you want to give you an example, the prime minister of Israel, all the prime ministers of Israel, all of them, all the leaders from 48 till now were Ashkenaz. Ben Gurion, the founder of the state, Eshkol, everybody, you know, Sharon, till Bibi Netanyahu, all are Ashkenaz. I mean, Jewish that came from East Europe, not from Germany, from East Europe, Polish, Russian, Latvia, and all, Ukraine, and all this. They call themselves Ashkenaz arriving here. Today, if you want to understand the politics in Israel, always the leader is Ashkenaz. Now, the party in power of Bibi Netanyahu the prime minister, most of the voters in this party are from Jewish Arab origin. I mean, what we call them Oriental Jews. Most of the party of Bibi Netanyahu are Oriental Jews, but always this party, now in power, vote as a leader. The premier leader always has Ashkenaz. 2 years ago, I published an article in the Haaretz, in the journal Haaretz. It's the most important journal in Israel. And I tried to explain why Oriental Jews, Israelis, are voting all the time for Ashkenaz leaders. And as a half joke, I conclude this article saying that they cannot trust the Arab. Then they cannot trust somebody that came from their origin. You understand me?
Yes, sir.
Most of them, if you want, the alienation in face of the Palestinians are more stronger even of the alienation of the Ashkenaz. Because arriving here in the 50s, speaking Arab, they know that they have to make the effort to stress the fact that they are Jewish and not Arabs. Until now, the parts of the Israeli society that are for the right wing, for Bibi Netanyahu, the majority is from Oriental, what we call here Oriental Jews. I don't know if it made clear. Is like if you want, white poor people hated blacks in United States and South America much more than the Ashkenaz of United States. I mean, people that were living in Boston. Do you understand? People living in Boston and New York hate less the blacks in the South like the white poor people. The same thing is here. The Oriental people has a hate against the Arab Palestinian for the distinction, to distinct themselves from them, much more stronger than the Ashkenaz. But the Ashkenaz are leading this state till now.
So just the last one before moving on to the question answer. So, sir, at the last of your book, at closing paragraphs of your book, you say that inflow of power from Israeli transnational diaspora that's living in US, that's living in Canada, Israel, the Israeli diaspora, and you says that the diaspora does not speak Hebrew anymore. The diaspora did not send their children to live in Israel anymore, but they support the Israeli foreign policy in their countries. So this change that's happening in the diaspora, in the transnational diaspora, will inflict the change in the Israel. Can you explain it a bit more?
Why they're helping Israel? What? First of all, you are sure that I'm using the word diaspora?
Can you say again, sir?
You are sure that I'm using in the book the word diaspora?
Yes.
It's a wrong translation. Okay, but because I am not using the word diaspora today. I'm speaking about Jewish community abroad. Okay, because the word diaspora is something it has connection with exile.
Okay.
Diaspora, you understand? There is not a Jewish diaspora. There is Jewish communities, Americans, French. Now, they are not going to emigrate to Israel. Nobody wants to emigrate to Israel. Only in the time of the corona, lately, a lot of Jewish from New York that hadn't medical covered in New York took planes to arrive here to have a medical cover in time of the corona. And also they send the dead people, the dead Jews, to the Holy Land to be buried here with the corona, It was a scandal, okay? Going back to the question, I wrote this book now, the new book, that I hope that it will be translated soon to English. Yeah, I will show you. And I try to explain the future of this, what you call the diaspora. See? No. See. No, you cannot see it. The title, no.
We can see it, sir. Yes.
This is the book.
Judephobia.
Anyway, I try to explain your question is this book that you see, to finish, to say, 65% of the young Jews in the United States are married with non-Jews. 65. In France, in England, it's 45. It's a new factor that shows you that if it continues to be like this, the Jewish diaspora will finish sooner or later, because it's not a people. The Zionists are afraid from intermarriage between Jewish and non-Jews in the United States. You know that in Israel you cannot marry a non-Jew. Not from religious point of view. It's much more from racist point of view. But in the United States, 65 of the young Jews are married non-Jews. They are worried about it. A year ago, the Minister of Education in Israel said that it is a kind of Holocaust, intermarriages in the United States. He compared it to Holocaust. You can imagine the stupidness of the concept of Zionism. He compared it to Holocaust. They are worried because, you know, they got money. The Jewish are continuing. They don't want to emigrate to the Middle East, but they are sending money. And without the support of some Jews in the United States, all the politics of the United States can be different. My hope is that the young Jewish more and more protest against Israel because the conduct of Israel in face of the Palestinian people in the occupied territory. You understand?
Yes.
Then voices, Jewish voices, more and more voices critic Israel. And even Bernie Sanders declared a few months ago that if he will be a president, he will not send automatically money to Israel, as Trump is doing all the time. But, as you know, if there are less American Jews that support Israel, Trump is the best friend of the Israeli state, of the Israeli destiny, of the Israeli community, on the Israeli racism. There were never an American president so lovely like Trump. They love him today in Israel like Moise, if you want, from the Bible.
Okay. Sir, we talk about Holocaust. Yes, it was a reality. It took place. But then on, after the Second World War, we saw the big genocide in Rwanda. We saw a genocide in Bosnia. So why it is that we have to get hammering effect that you have to talk about on one issue, but you cannot talk about the other issue? Or my first part of the question is this. And if we go beyond First World War and Second World War, we saw that the Belgium had the colony in Africa. We saw that Germany had the colony in Africa. King Leopold alone killed 10 million people in African colony. So there is no debate on that thing, but there is debate on particular things. So why these lines are drawn?
There is a few reasons. By the way, it's a chapter in this book. When I'm speaking, first of all, I start by saying that Hitler in the concentration, in the death camp, killed 11 million people. First of all, only half was from Jewish origin. Hitler killed 11 million people. Only half was Jews. Secondly, Belgium liquidated in Congo something around between 5 to 10 million people. Nobody knows about it. Rwanda, it was 800,000 with the little people they killed in the 90s. The bottom line is that in the 20th century, 100 million people were murdered not in the battles. 100 million. You heard me? The question is,
Yes, sir.
why 5.5 million of Jewish is so important to of the Western world? This is your question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I will tell you. You see, what Germany did, Nazi Germany did with the Jews, they copied the attitude of the colonialism in the Third World to Europe itself. It was unacceptable for the history after it, the fact that Hitler treated Jewish, Tsigan, Poland, and other Slavs as the British and the French colonies or the Belgian colonies treated people in the Third World. You understand me? Doing it in Europe is differently for the sensibility of a lot of Western historians. Bon. You know, it's good that the world is keeping in memory what we call the Holocaust. I don't like the word, by the way. But you are quite right that this something can disturb the fact that speaking about the 6 millions without saying that the 20th century 100 million were killed in not in the conventional war. You understand? 100 million, but maybe it's exaggerate. Maybe it's only 6 million. But don't forget that in the 20th century, 60 millions people were killed, murdered, not in the battles, not in wars. Now, going back, why the memory of the Holocaust is so important? It's important because the Jewish communities. It's important because, you know, it was Europeans that were murdered, not Africans, not Asiatic. Do you know that I think it was in the 18th century, how many Indians were killed in the when the Indian company decided to produce opium in Bengal? You are with me or not?
Yes, yes, we are with you, sir. You are talking about the Bengal famine?
Yeah, it's 7 million, I think.
Yes, yes, sir.
Something like 7 million were dying because of food. The English imposed of them to produce opium and not bread. You understand? Nobody knows this number. It is not a part of the world memory that the English people did it in India, in Bengal. I think it was in the 18th century, no? In the 18th century. No?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, then this is the problem of memory. This is the problem of history. This is the problem, the fact that I am a different historian. Sorry, that I'm a different historian. Exactly for these reasons. Then I repeat, I don't want to forget what they called Holocaust, but I want that my student will remember that the Eastern Indian society is responsible of 7 million people that were dying in the 18th century in Bengal because of business. Nobody knows it. of my students. The reason is because they are not European, they are Bengals, they are Indians. Okay?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. We have a question from Kabul. We have a friend. His name is Sadiq Nasiri. Sadiq Nasiri is a photographer, landscape photographer from Bamiyan city. Right now he's in Kabul, and he has a question. What exactly motivated you to write this book? Sadiq Nasiri is a Hazara, is an ethnic minority Hazara. So after the invasion of Taliban, he migrated to Iran to save his life. So the next thing is, he's saying for himself, I have been more than 23 years in exile, and I am more interested to know which feeling of yours led to write the book about migration of 1000 years. The second question of Sadiq Nasiri is, do you think when you write about Jewish history of ethnicity, you encourage ethnicities, especially Arab and Palestine, to prove about their land?
I didn't understand the second question. I will answer the first one, okay? Why I wrote the book, I tried to explain it before, you know. The ideological point of view of mine, the ideological motivation, or moral, even moral position that I have, is to decompose any idea of essentialist identities. I'm afraid with essentialism, you understand? I don't believe that people are, you know, fixed Pakistani, Jews, Zionists, Israelis. No, I don't believe. And I think that we are living in a time, because all the difficulties, because all the essentialism is the basic of definition of human being. It's also the source of so many killings, of so many hatred in the world. And I wrote a book with a moral position to show that most of us came from a lot of origin. We are not born with the same, you know, sources, from the same sources that the national education is teaching us. I don't want to say nothing about Pakistan. I have a few things, but I prefer not to say.
Sir, you are most encouraged to say anything, because let me share my example. When I put forward the proposal to have a research on 1970, 1971 is the place when Pakistan was departed. So my topic was not approved, and if you are the professor in my university, you couldn't have been writing this book in Pakistan. Pakistan is.
I have not illusions. You know, I am not illusions. I don't have illusions. You have to understand. I used the fact that I can write this book here in Israel, and I knew that nobody instead of me will write this. You understand? There are places that people cannot write books like this. I'm quite sure that I am privileged. The fact that I am from Jewish origin and I can write in Israel a book like this. This is the reason. The motivation, if you want, is in some way ideological, political motivation. Because, you know, I try to be honest. I try to be objective. I try to use sources as I can. But I always think that history is not a science. And the fact that we apply the word the science of history, it's not correct, you know, to compare it to physics, chemic, and all this. Any history is ideological. I wrote a book about it. I prefer a position, a critical position in historiography that I did, you understand? And there are not enough people, I'm not the only one. You know, one of my teachers was Hobsbawm. You know who is Hobsbawm? Hobsbawm.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, I met him when I was a student in Paris, and I have discussions with him But the fact that a historian like Hobsbawm wrote of my book, he wrote of my book, there is not books that change history, but if it will be a chance of a book to change history, is the book of Shlomo Sand. I was so happy to read this from a historian like Hobsbawm. And after it, I was thinking I don't have to continue to write books. You understand? It was enough for me.
Sir, when you shared many things, so let me share with you that the founder of Pakistan, Jinnah, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So in Pakistan, in any public university, you are not allowed to do a PhD or an MPhil on Jinnah. You are not allowed to do it.
Fantastic.
Okay. So, sir, we have a question.
Wait, one moment about Jinnah. It was in some moment. I was interested lately with Jinnah as a complex, I will not say too much about it, don't be afraid. It's a complex personality, Jinnah. It's a very complex personality. It was difficult for me to understand completely what was Jinnah. I don't want to continue, but I was very, very curious about Jinnah.
Sir, we have a question from Stephanie Rice. She's from Germany and she has a question for you.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, actually I was intending to write it, but okay. It's actually as a question, it was more something I wanted to say in addition to the question before with somehow why Holocaust seems to be remembered differently than other genocides. And I think it has also a lot to do with feeling not guilty, as weird as it probably sounds. For example, when let's say the Germany we know now was established after the Second World War. Actually, it was established by old Nazis, more or less. And the same people who were responsible for the Nuremberg laws became high ministers, became high positions and high responsibilities over different services and jurisdiction, etc. So, of course, there were people somehow not much interested in dealing with the past, but there was now a state which claims to be a Jewish state. So, it's like they somehow started to project or to project Jews or to perceive Jews not as Jews anymore, but as kind of a state. And that's a state which somehow has common imperialist interests with the German state. So if you do now something nasty on the political level, you can come now with this cheap trick like, but because we did something terrible in the Holocaust, you can't criticize Israel now, and we have to support Israel in every single way. It has now kind of special status. They claim somehow it has something to do with a guilt, but actually it has only something to do with a bad business. But all this guilt feeling you can project now on the state and use it for political purposes for further committing crimes elsewhere. So this is somehow a very actually somehow a very perverted outcome of the history, kind of. It's a kind of abuse of Holocaust, somehow to abuse it to justify inhumane politics in the end. But it's somehow something that's beloved to do today. And somehow this narrative of Israel is the result of the Holocaust, which for sure, like this is not true. But this narrative is repeated so often that people believe it. And every time there's something weird going on, like, oh my God, we're sending weapons to Israel. Actually, we are not allowed by law to send weapons into a region which has high likeliness of war, for example. They say, yeah, but because of Holocaust. Or to shut down criticism on Israeli politics. Either it's not mentioned here in the newspaper or that, yeah, because of Holocaust, you should, as a German, judge this differently. This somehow plays also a role, and also some Zionist lobbyists somehow discovered that, and they play very hard on that card. So, Holocaust is mentioned a lot here. It's for some people even kind of identity part without really understanding why this was a bad thing. And yeah, I think this plays an important role why it's so highly mentioned, so often mentioned, so often discussed here. And the other victims of the very same crime, especially Roma and Sinti people, they are not existent in the German memory. There is no single Holocaust movie, including a Roma person and his perspective. Most Germans even don't know the Roma word for Holocaust, nor do they have any memorials here. I think they have one small in Berlin after many, many years of troubles. And while to Jewish people, they are getting easier a German passport because of Holocaust, which I'm very fine with. But for Roma and Sinti people trying to look for asylum in Germany, actually they are forbidden to apply now, because what the German state did a few years ago was, my God, all these gypsies from the Southeast European states, they're all criminal. This old attitude, which led also to their determination during the Second World War. They're all criminal and evil people, and we don't want them. And actually, there's no problem in Southeast Europe. It's safe countries, and they put a sentence in the law: people from safe countries not getting any asylum. So they're out of it, and there's no German responsibility for these people. So yeah, it was just a small adding because someone was asking us. It's not a real question.
Okay, I will try to answer partly because it's a very, very large question, not so easy to answer on it. One way, I'm happy that the Germans feel guilty, first of all. I'm less happy that Germans don't know that between the 5 millions of Polish that were killed in the camp, half of them were Jewish and half of them were Polish Catholic. I repeat, 5 million Polish were exterminated in the camp, 2.5 million were Polish Catholic. No, I don't believe that the Germans knows it. For example, I give you one example, not only the Roma, Polish, 2 millions of Soviet soldiers, by the way, in Auschwitz. And by the way, Auschwitz were built in the beginning not for Jewish. It was built for Polish intellectuals, prisoners. Now, I am happy that Germans feel guilty. The fact that Israel and Zionism profit of this sense of guilty is a political, historical question for me, very important. You see, all my contacts with Germans are sometimes complicated in some way. By the way, I know very well what happened in the 50s with all the ex-Nazis becoming a part of the German apparatus of state. And you know, the relationship of Israel to Germany never was around the question of Holocaust, but to use the sense of guilty to the profit of the Israeli interest. Now, I repeat, I'm happy that a lot of Germans feel guilty. I will be more happy if they will understand that the Roma, by the way, from percentage, the Roma people were killed more than the Jewish, if you compare it to the quantity of population of the Roma. Now, for me, if you want, it's a large question because it's not the German, only the German that feel guilty. Also the French, the Belgium, the Holland. Why the Americans are feeling guilty and have to pay so much attention to Israel? It's a good work of the Zionism, succeed, but also the fact that you know, a lot of Jewish suffered for a long time. It's not only the Holocaust. It's a fact that the Jews suffer from anti-Semitism for hundreds of years, from Judophobia. Then it's not only the Holocaust. By the way, maybe it's occasion to say that Hitler, it's very important to understand it, Hitler didn't want to kill Jews. He wanted to throw them away from Europe. It's only in 1941 when he understood that he cannot kick them out from Europe, then he decided to liquidate them. I stress this fact to understand what is historical politics till today. I repeat, when he found out that he cannot kick them out from Europe, he decided to liquidate them systematically. Okay? It's very, very important to understand it. Going back, yes, it disgusts me that Israeli profit from this history and shut up people that criticize Israel, because Israel identify anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. Is one of the most weapons, ideological weapons of the Israeli state today. I wrote this last book to separate between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. There is a joke in the Israeli society that once upon a time, an anti-Semitic was a person that hated Jews. Today, anti-Semitic is somebody that the Jews hate him. Now, as a last joke, you know, in the end of the 19th century in Germany, it was a joke that say that a philo-Semitic is an anti-Semitic that loves Jews. I think that most of the Israelis are descendant of this behavior. I mean, philo-Semitism is anti-Semitic, they love Jews. Israelis are racist, they don't like non-Jews. Now, the question is delicate about the Holocaust, because from one side, I think that it's a good that people feel guilty. Not only the Germans, the French, especially the Israelis. All my work is dedicated that the Israel will feel worse and guilty what they did here in Palestine. You understand me? Now, a month ago, I had a visit of a Grüne deputy of the Bundestag that came to interview me here in Tel Aviv. And then in the conversation between us, he was very, very sympathetic. And it's very, and you know, I make a joke and say that it was much more logic after 45 that the Sudet could become a Jewish state. You know, at that time, the Red Army and the Czech Army threw all the Germans from the Sudet. Something more than 2 million people of Germans were kicked out from the Sudet. And I say that it was much more logic to make a Jewish state in the Sudet. I told it as a joke, you understand? And then this Grüne, green deputies say, you know, my family came from Sudet. It was so strange when he said it. He said, I was born in Germany, but my parents were born in Sudet and they were kicked up in 45. Then I said that it was a joke, but building a Jewish state on the shoulders of the Arabs that didn't make any harm to Israel is very strange for me till now. Yes, feeling guilty is not bad for itself. The question is how you translate it politically. And unfortunately, a lot of Germans translated as supporting Israel to continue to occupy the Palestinians. Thank you very much.
Do we have another question from the audience? Okay.
Sir, I shall only say vote of thanks for being a vocal, clear, and candid upon the issues, and a very enlightened lecture by Sir Shlomo. I am enlightened from this lecture very much.
Sir,
I'm a little bit tired. Sorry to not to be concentrated on the question. I'm a little bit tired from the.
Sir, before we just finished, let's talk about the Yemeni Jews. You write about the Yemeni Jews that they are Jews, they are from Yemen, but they are blacks. So within the hierarchy, they are down there. So what is the situation by now?
No, they are not blacks. They are half blacks. Ethiopians are blacks. Yemenis are half blacks. I mean, I was in a hospital 3 years ago. In one of the nurses was Ethiopian, a black Jew. Okay, she worked at night, and I started to speak with her. And I asked her where you are living. She said in the occupied territories. She said the Zionist term of the liberate territories. And I asked her from where you are born. She said I was born in Israel, in the liberate territories. And I asked, and your parents? She said they came from Ethiopia. Then I say, why you consider yourself as a Jew when you are different from the Ashkenaz? You are so nice face and nice hair that the Ashkenaz girls don't have, and it's okay for me that you are considered come Jew, but in what way you are Jew? I ask her. Then she say, because 2,000 years ago, my ancestor came from Israel to Ethiopia. Then I asked her, how you become in 2,000 years so black? And she said, it's the sun. They say, it's not enough 2,000 years to become black. I say, it's 30,000 maybe. Then she said, no, my parents came from Israel. And we come back 20 years ago to our land. She told me. Now, it's very, very interesting that from one side, most of the Israelis are quite racist against black. From the other side, they consider them to be descendant of the ancient Hebrew. The legends say that Solomon, the king, got the queen from Ethiopia. She came to Jerusalem. He loves a lot women, and she has, children, and they become the Ethiopian Jewish people. This is the legend, and people believe in it. You understand? The Yemenite who came from Yemen, they are not blacks, but the hair is African hair, and they are very, very nice girls. By the way, in the thriller, I'm speaking about it. Now, you can imagine people are looking each other and see the different origin of their parents. But the ideological is so strong, they are looking at the others, seeing a Yemenite, with hairs and all this, in believing that they are the same race. Now it's something perverse. I cannot understand it. They are looking and believe that they are the same race. It shows you one thing. Subjective view about identity is stronger than reality. You understand it? Subjective view, ideological, educational view about the otherness is stronger from the reality. They are looking on the African and they believe that they're the same race, Jewish race. Voila. Okay?
Sir, how do you perceive the future? Like in the future, we don't see anything like the West. The America needs a policeman in the Middle East, so policeman is there. How do you perceive the coming future?
Better not to speak about it. Now, you see, I'm very pessimistic. But one thing important, now I become older. One thing important, if I'm pessimist, I'm never fatalist. I was never fatalist. Then I'm a pessimist that continue to hope. Now, you have to understand one thing. I'm quite sure that in the process, I cannot say in the end, Israel cannot win. You have to understand. United States cannot win. The problem is how it will be changed, with a lot of blood or much less. This is the question. I'm quite sure that Israel in this position, and even the United States in this position, it's not eternity. You have to understand, it's not eternity. And you know, Israel is 72 years. 72 years. It's nothing. You have to understand. Pakistan, how long is Pakistan historically? From 48 till now. It's very short. You have to understand.
And even in that period, it disintegrated in 72. New country was born.
You understand? 48 till now. It's very short historically for a historian. It's very short. With all the belief of eternity, It's very short. The world is changing. Then today I am pessimist because a lot of process, you know, kind of national populism everywhere. Yeah. But I think that my parents suffered much more from history that we are suffering today.
Sir, our participant from Kabul, he has a request. He's a documentary filmmaker and he read about you. And now he has a request that if you can deliver a lecture on film and history.
No. I wrote a book that wasn't translated to English, but it was translated to Spanish, French. It was a few years that I arrived to the conclusion that the audiovisual is more important than writings in the formation of consciousness. This is the reason that I work a few years on films. You understand? I love films, and I understood that the power of the audiovisual in our culture is so strong that as a historian I have to confront it myself with the ideological production of the cinematheque, the film production. Now, to speak about it today, you know, I'm on the history of the left. It's a little bit pretentious to do it, but I think that nobody wrote a short history, what is the meaning of left in the 200 years that we pass? And what is also the future of the left? You see, the left in the world is in a bad position today, but social conflicts didn't stop. Revolts didn't stop. And I think that we have to stop and to think what was the left from the, if you want, from the 17th century to today. Now, the basic of all the left is equality. You heard me? For the left, equality was the central myth of the movement. I try to understand it better in my next book. Then if you want in in a short time to speak about the history of the left. What is the meaning of the left? What is the meaning of equality in the modern times? Okay? By the way, maybe as a last, I think about the equality, I was thinking about the three religions, Judaism, Christianity, and the Islam. All these three religions didn't oppose slavery. Did you think about it? Christianity, Judaism, and Islam wasn't against slavery. Do you know it?
Yes, we know that, sir.
Sorry?
Yes, we know that, sir. And if you can just put the camera in between so we can see your face, like, can you tilt a little bit?
Okay. Anyway, I wanted to say that the desire of equality is the big machine of the left in the last 200 years. I want to understand better what is the crisis of the left today. You know, this is the center of my work today. To understand why the left is in a crisis and why it didn't finish. Okay?
That's so nice of you, sir. We have a vote of thanks for you that you came and you delivered a very lengthy lecture. Before just ending up, let me share some similarities which I found while reading your book. When you talk about the law that you in the Knesset, some law there's some law that you mentioned in the book that nobody can talk about the state of Israel, so he's a conspirator. So it's the same thing with Pakistan. In the constitution of Pakistan, we have objective resolution. So objective resolution is only Muslim can be prime minister, only Muslim can be. So there are Christians in this country, there are Hindus in this country, there are Sikhs in this country. So it's on many level I found similarities. But the starting difference that I found that you are able to write this book and you are staying in public university, you are not thrown out of the university. My professors in my MPhil lectures, they said that we can talk with you, just 2 or 3 people, that what is reality. We scared for our jobs. We will be thrown out from the university. So this is the only difference, and it's a starking difference, that you are writing that book, and in Pakistani public sector universities there is no questioning. Whatever is happening is in the private sector university, and they are so much elite that they are disconnected from the lower classes of the people. And when you talk about Jinnah, so there is too much literature and we all are from left. So I can quote one example. When Stanley Wolpert, while reading the book of Stanley Wolpert writes that Jinnah married a Zoroastrian girl. So she was Zoroastrian, and she married her. And when the daughter of Jinnah, she wanted to marry a Christian guy. She came to Jinnah after partition. It was after partition, it's 48. She came to Jinnah and says that I want to marry a Christian guy. So he says that the Jinnah replied that, didn't you find one Muslim guy out of millions? And I quote that she replied back, didn't you find one Muslim girl rather than the Zoroastrian girl of my mother?
I know that I'm privileged, and be sure that you know that the majority of the intellectuals in the world found difficult much more than me. You understand?
Yeah.
I'm quite aware of the fact that I could wrote this book, be translated, and not be afraid. I'm not, I mean, I suffer quite a lot from the authorities, but I'm privileged because I'm a Jew in a Jewish state. Thank you very much and hope to speak again with you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for your long time, and thank you for writing this book and getting it translated to English. Let's translate your every book to English so that we can read it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
सर जी, आपको कैसा लगा? सर जी, कैसा लगा आपको? सर जी,
म्यूट नहीं किया हुआ।